Our hearts beat to the city streets. We began to feel the fire.
Be careful what you wish. A cautionary tale of internet dating by the author, Declan Conner. Part 1. Ross Kellerman stood behind his bar in a pensive mood. He thought back to the day he opened his mail. Ross pictured reading through his confirmation that his divorce was final, then slipping the papers into his jacket pocket. The best thing about being single, he'd thought, was that instead of listening to your partner's whining and being peeved at bad habits, you only had your own to contend with. Or so Ross had thought when his divorce papers had arrived. Freedom, his mind had screamed. But then reality slapped him in the face. He sighed, then placed a tray of beer glasses in the wash machine. He'd never been happy with the till death do us part portion of the vows. His best man, Bob Taylor, far from trying to talk him out of it, as was tradition, convinced him all those years ago, 20 to be precise, the vow was only a small price to pay for a future of unlimited testosterone-charged sex. He now knew Bob Taylor had been talking crap. Best I try living alone now, he'd thought, while I still have the earth underfoot to carry me and my looks intact. But that was 9 months ago. That's 272 lonely days, or 6,528 hours and counting, and not a date in sight. Be careful what you wish for, Bob had said when he visited Ross's bar and announced he wanted to get divorced. Wishes have a tendency to bite you in the ass. He was right on that score. The loneliness was excruciating. Not to mention he was stuck behind his bar 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, having had to let the staff go to keep up his alimony payments. He had high hopes at first. Aged 42, and a businessman with the look of a young Mel Gibson, he thought the pickings would be easy. Young women in the bar always hit on him. He'd kept them at arm's length before, but with his wife out of the way, well, what a letdown. He now knew they were either angling for free drinks, or b, hankering for him to ignore them snorting coke in the ladies' room. A few cries of "fucking pervert" soon put back any notion of him trying to flirt back. Still, it didn't stop him thinking about sex 100 times a day. Maybe I am turning pervy, he thought.
Hey, snap out of it. How long do I have to wait? Pull your head out of your ass, Ross. Give us 2 more buds.
Sure, coming up, he called back with a half-smile and wished all his customers would disappear. Ross flicked the lids off the bottles and slammed the 2 buds on the bar top. He took the wish back as they dropped cash on the counter, mindful of Bob's advice on the wishing subject. His face lit up when Bob walked in. The rednecks philosophizing around the bar bored the crap out of him. Luckily, most of them were too intoxicated to notice he got the occasional yeah, or no shit, in the wrong place. How much football and baseball can a man talk about, he wondered, especially when the jukebox speakers drowned out the commentary so as to make most of it unintelligible. Bob tapped on the bar to get Ross's attention.
Hi buddy, I'll have the usual. So, how's it going on the dating front?
It ain't. Tell you the truth, I wish I were back with Gloria some days.
What, and put up with knowing she was screwing that slimeball that used to prop the bar up on her shift? Man, you're weird sometimes. I keep telling you, be careful what you wish for.
That wish thing? Oh yeah. I don't like to think about her messing around. I always like to imagine it was my choice to be single. Anyway, there was no proof she slept with Dodgy Dave. He handed Bob a beer.
First instincts, I always say. If you think it, it's probably true. Like I said, you're weird sometimes.
He let Bob's derogatory remark pass. Anyone else and he'd have barred them. Maybe you're right, I'm going nuts. Last night I nearly hit on old Sandra. Luckily, I had the sense to cut my hands at the bathroom sink. If I hadn't come to my senses, I'd have had to close the bar and board it up out of embarrassment. I don't know how many more blisters my left hand can take. Bob stroked his chin.
Have you thought of trying a singles club or speed dating?
Ross gave him a look while pulling a beer for a customer. Give me a break. With this ball and chain around my neck? He waved around the bar. It's like having a felon's electronic tag on my ankle. Bob gave him a look of disdain. Ross could see some sarcastic words of wisdom coming his way.
Pay for staff for one night. It won't break the bank.
Ross thought if only Bob knew how dire his finances were at the bar, he wouldn't have made that suggestion. Nah. What good's that? So, I take a night off and get a date, big deal. What then? Another damn night off and then another one? Bob reached into his jacket pocket and took out his cell phone.
I've got a telephone number if you like. It'll only cost $100 and give your hand a chance to heal.
Ross thought he was taking the rise out of him and scoffed. Very funny. Bob put his cell phone back in his pocket. A look of concern spread on Bob's face.
I hate to see you like this. There must be some way of you meeting a woman.
Ross clicked his tongue when a customer butted in on their conversation.
Jesus, Bob, what planet do you live on? Singles clubs and speed dating went out years ago. There is a solution. Internet dating.
What would you know about internet dating? Asked Ross. Taxi Dave chuckled.
What you want to know? I got 2 or 3 on the go, and you don't have to meet them. Leastways not if you pick the ones from outside the country.
Bob swiveled on his stool in Taxi Dave's direction.
No shit, old man. Do they know you're 68?
Taxi Dave took a swig of his beer, then wiped the spillage from his beard.
Nah, that'd spoil it. Sure is a cure for loneliness though. Just saying.
They moved down the bar out of earshot, and Bob cupped his hand to cover his mouth.
He's got a point. What was it you're always saying? The worst time is after closing the bar or those 3 hours before you go to bed. Just give it a try.
Part 2. Ross looked at his watch. He wondered if the customers would realize he'd turned the bar clock forward 10 minutes. Last orders, he called out.
Hey Ross, gimme 3 beers.
Said Ohio Dave. Ross threw him a look. 1 drink each. I've had enough of all of you for one day. Don't you have a bed to go to?
Better make it a large whiskey then. What a miserable bastard you are at times. Your loss.
With the last one served, he tallied the day's take on the till system. He deduced that the reason they came to the bar was to get drunk and blot out their miserable lives. He shook his head at unkind thoughts. Bidding the last one through the door, his demeanor shrank at thoughts of having to clean up before retiring. Thanking God, he looked up and down the street as the last of his customers zigzagged home. He sucked in a lungful of sweet air before he ambled back inside, locked the door, and then leaned back against it. He felt as though someone had turned the volume off to his existence in the solitude of the empty bar. The stench of the beer-stained carpet hit him. The pungent smell seemed to revive him, and his mind took over from the banter of his customers, restoring some semblance of being. I wonder where the stale beer smell goes when I'm working, he thought. A huge sigh escaped his lips, and, collecting the cash drawer, he trudged up the stairway to his office. He began to wonder if all single men had the same desperate yearning to have the warmth of a woman at their side, and not just for the sex. Although, he had to admit, sex seemed to be his prime motivation. Taxi Dave had been right when he announced, women are like parking spaces. Never one around when you need one. Of course, he'd heard all the old jokes before, but didn't have the heart to tell him there was a punchline. He could have killed Conspiracy Dave when he finished the joke off for him, pointing to disabled Mary behind her back. You could always park it in the handicapped, he'd said to everyone bursting out laughing at her expense. The joke hadn't been lost on her, considering she likely saw him pointing at her in the reflection of the mirror behind the bar. In your dreams, fat boy, she'd said and rolled her eyes. The jocks all roared with laughter. Thank goodness she took it in good humor, he thought. Still, it just about summed up how he felt. Maybe I wouldn't have a business if it weren't for single people, he mused. He wondered if his customers knew just how many hours it took to run a bar. After a quick clean around, he headed up to his office. Sat at his desk, he was about to turn off his computer when a thought crossed his mind. No one's looking over my shoulder. What the hell? Ross connected to the internet. He'd seen it at the top of the browser page often enough, meet singles in your area now. He put his cursor arrow of the link. Join for free, it said, leaving him with nothing to lose. He might have known there's no such thing as free. At least he thought he would get the chance to see if there was anything of interest on the site. 20 minutes later, he'd entered his profile, and after 20 failed attempts, he managed to take a reasonable picture on the webcam and clicked his cursor arrow on the upload box. Instantaneously, he received his key by email, and he was in. He started like a child in a sweet shop with the search function. Age group, it asked, and he typed in 25 to 35. As he trawled through the profiles, a pattern seemed to emerge. Most in the age range of 25 to 30 were looking for someone up to 35. Those aged 30 to 35 seemed to be looking for someone between 25 and 30. How odd, he thought. Ross decided to change the criteria and typed in 36 to 42. The strange thing with this group was they didn't seem to be aging on their profile pics. 3 hours later, he felt sleepy. There were many possibilities, but he had no way of contacting them unless he made a payment for full membership. He thought it better to wait and see if a paid-up member contacted him, then he could decide if it was worth paying the fee. Part 3. The following day he checked his dating messages. His inbox was empty. The profile picture he'd uploaded horrified him. An oh no escaped his lips and he tugged at his hair. He realized he'd not taken down the nude calendar behind him. With the calendar removed, he took another webcam photo and uploaded it. Ross trudged down the stairway and opened the bar. True to form, his regulars drifted in over the next few hours. "What do you think about arranged marriages?" asked Ross, trying to steer the conversation away from baseball statistics. His daydreaming had brought the question to mind after he recalled a documentary about Australian farmers living in isolation in the outback and their search for a wife. It made him think of his own situation, but he didn't want to spell it out to these jokers. He wished he hadn't asked.
Hell, Ross, give us a break. It's like taking a dump, sticking your hand down the can, swishing amongst the crap and hoping to pull out a diamond. I mean, come on, it may work in third world countries, but hell, they abolished slavery here years ago.
Ross rolled his eyes to Conspiracy Dave slapping Depressive Dave on the shoulder.
I'll second that. What with all the conflicts in the Islamic countries, I hear they've at least stopped the women from walking behind their husbands.
"What the hell's that got to do with anything?" asked Ross.
Landmines. Poor suckers have to walk in front now.
The entire bar erupted in laughter when Genius Dave chipped in. "I was thinking blow-up dolls. They don't answer back, but they can't cook. Now, if they invented a robot..." Ross interrupted them with a sigh and the flats of his hands. "Forget it, guys. Get back to your baseball. Why is it we can never have a sensible debate around here, instead of listening to the same old tired jokes?" asked Ross as he walked away. "Freaking morons," he mumbled. Ross retreated into the service area to wash some glasses, dreaming of sunbathing on a beach in the tropics. Part 4. To Ross's relief, closing time hadn't come fast enough, and when it did, he wasted no time in locking up and rushing to his office. "Pay dirt." He opened a message on his dating site inbox. "You have 2 members who wish to converse with you. To access your messages, please complete the subscription page," it read. Ross eagerly clicked on the subscription button and entered his credit card details. His heart sank when he opened the first message and accessed her profile. Age 57. Young at heart. Last thing he wanted was to be someone's toy boy. The next was more promising. Mary, age 39. I'm looking for a serious relationship with a view to marriage. She didn't look a day older than 30 with all the curves where they should be. He typed out a message saying he would like to chat with her, but he worked late and asked if it would be possible to chat on the site's messenger service after 11:30 the following night. A moment's hesitation and he pressed send. Part 5. The following evening at closing time, Ross had a smile a mile wide. Time had passed in an instant when he glanced at the bar clock while thanking God the last of the customers had almost finished their drinks. He whistled a tune while working his way around the tables collecting glasses. He hadn't been able to get a picture of his date out of his mind. She was everything he wished for in the looks department. As the night drew to a close, he began to panic. Chatting over the bar was one thing, but he started to feel terrified about how you chat over the net. Do I ask her straight out for a date? Or do I play it cool and get to know her? The questions kept going over and over in his mind. He thought of questions he would need to ask and noted them down, until he felt like a nervous wreck with the list so long. Bob called into the bar for last orders. Ross ushered him out of earshot of the others in the bar. "I've joined a dating site, and I've got one on the hook," he whispered. "And she's a looker."
When are you taking her out on a date?
Ross stood there with his hands on his hips. "Give me a chance, we haven't even talked yet. God knows what I'll do for a first date. Maybe I'd better meet her for a coffee one morning before the bar opens?"
Don't be so soft, go straight for a killer date. I'll watch the bar for you one night.
Bob's words had given him some confidence. Taking time out without staff was the one thing that lay heavy on his mind. After closing, he bounded up the stairway into his office. He watched impatiently as the computer lights flashed and finally powered up. He entered the dating site looking for activity. "She's online." His stomach burned, and he felt like a dumbstruck teenager on a first date. If anyone had been watching, he may well have been taken for a piano player as he limbered up his fingers. After much cracking of knuckles, he sent a message. "Hello." He sat back and waited. "Hello." She typed back. The reply was like a shock to his system, and he panicked as to what to type next. He fumbled through his notes. She must have sensed his hesitation. "Your picture looks cute. I see you've dumped the calendar," she continued. He felt his cheeks rouge and thanked God she couldn't see his embarrassment. "You look cute too. Thanks for waiting for me." The small talk continued, and he began to relax. But at the back of his mind, he wondered how he could steer it around to ask for a date. "I have to be going now," she said. It kind of forced the issue, and, after hesitating, he typed away. "How about meeting up for a date one evening?" He poised his finger over the button. After a long pause, he pressed send and crossed his fingers in a wish. "Sure," she replied almost as soon as she received it. Relief washed through his body as they made arrangements. Part 6. Ross sat waiting at the coffee bar in the mall with a nervous expectation. 7:30, they'd agreed, and it was now 8 o'clock. He was about to leave when he felt a tap on the shoulder.
"Thanks for waiting. My, what a rush. I had to work late."
"Mary?" he said as he spun round. He was sure she had sent her older sister along to break some kind of bad news. The woman looked at least 50. His heart sank as she replied.
"Yeah, that's me. Good of you waiting. Apologies once again. Pleased to meet you."
As she took a seat opposite, the picture of her in his mind faded as it morphed into the vision before him. Out of politeness he stuck around for an hour, then made his excuses and left. Ross steeled his resolve as he entered his bar. Everyone stopped talking and turned his way. It was as if he had walked on center stage as the act for the night, and the stage lights caught him like a rabbit frozen in headlights. Everyone fired sarcastic questions and comments as he retreated into the service area behind his bar. Bob followed in his wake. "Never gonna live this down," Ross said.
You're back early. What happened?
"It's that damn wish thing of yours. I wished, and, well, the woman lied about her age." Bob consoled him and gave him the moral support to face his customers. At the end of the evening, after suffering the taunts, Bob and Ross had a heart-to-heart. Ross determined he needed to change his life. The bar had to go in favor of a 9-to-5 job if he were to have any semblance of building a new life. "I'll call the agent in the morning," he said. "I'd be better off back in the construction business." Part 7. As the weeks passed, Ross found a buyer for his bar and was waiting for the paperwork from his attorney. He sat at his desk having almost given up on internet dating, but it wasn't for lack of trying. More clued into the whole process, he always pushed the point to find out exactly when their profile pictures had been taken. It usually ended the conversation abruptly. He guessed that women couldn't resist that little white lie in the same way he had said he was a non-smoker. Taxi Dave's advice had proved invaluable. He no longer used the site to seek a partner, but to make friends and pass the lonely periods in his life. Ross opened the dating site and checked his inbox. He'd received a message, but it didn't read right. "My name is Ivana. I would like to get you to know. My subscription finish. Please email me." Followed by the email address. He shook his head at her bad command of English. A press of the button and he located her profile. Age 29, single, no children. Languages, Russian and English. Location Moscow. He could see her English wasn't perfect. But mindful of Taxi Dave's experience and a hot profile picture, he thought he might as well exchange emails in the same way one would exchange letters with a pen pal. He typed out a brief email and sent it off. At the end of the night, he checked his emails and was surprised she had replied so quickly. Her writing wasn't very good but readable and ran to over 1,000 words about her background and situation. 3 photographs were included as attachments, and he downloaded them. Beautiful. The pictures were taken in parks. Ivana dressed in ordinary clothes with no sexy poses, which kind of endeared her to him. He read the email over and over. Her father had died when she was young. She was university educated and lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of Moscow with her mother. Her ambition was to leave Russia, to marry and have children. Ross composed a lengthy email. At the end of it, he asked her why she would be interested in an older man. The following morning she replied, "My dearest Ross, glad to hear you. Age for me is not the important. It is good man I like you to know. Here in Russia the men all drink vodka and batter the women. They show no respect." Ross read the lengthy email with interest. 3 more photographs were attached. This time they were taken outside historical buildings. He sent a long email back and explained his dislikes of American culture in relation to women from his experience of internet dating. As the days passed, his entire thoughts were steeped in the anticipation of more exchanges of emails and photographs. After 2 weeks of constant exchanges, Ross began to work out scenarios. Maybe I could visit her on vacation when the bar sells, he thought. His entire being felt consumed by images of her. They started to talk of hopes and aspirations, and then love crept into the narrative. He couldn't understand exactly how he felt. How can you fall in love with text on a screen, he thought. But there was no doubt about it, he felt a yearning to be with her. It was not something he could talk over with Bob, or his customers, God forbid. He finally asked if she would like to meet him if he traveled to Russia on vacation. No, she replied. It would be better if I visited you. Here in Russia is dangerous. Ross was deflated, but undeterred. Maybe she was right. He'd heard enough stories about the Russian mafia and the kidnapping of tourists to extort money. I would need a visa, she typed, but I don't have money. Here is expensive for me. I only earn what would be $100 every month, and the cost is $2,000. $2,000 was a lot for Ross, but when the bar sold it would be no problem, and besides, he reasoned it would cost him more than that to visit her. Okay then, when I've sold the bar, I'll send the money, he wrote back. Her reply set him back. My darling Ross, I am excited to know you. When we meet, I know we will marry and live happy for life. I have sent you special photographs only for you to look. The 3 pictures showed her scantily dressed in sexy poses. Her body was perfect and stirred his passion. $2,000? Pocket change, he thought. Ross searched his browser for a translation site. He opened his desk drawer and retrieved some post-it notes. He thought it sensible if he knew some Russian words for when she arrived. He started with the word door, then wrote it on the note phonetically so he could pronounce it. 2 hours later and every object, his wall, windows and doors were covered in yellow post-it notes, down to knives and forks. Ross dropped his backside on the sofa with a self-satisfied smile on his lips with thoughts of Ivana arriving. Part 8. Ross stood behind his bar, daydreaming of the future that might unfold with Ivana. Taxi Dave stroked his beard to a point.
Come on, spit it out. What the hell's going on in that dumbass mind of yours?
Ross hadn't realized he was wearing his thoughts on his face. He turned to Dave. Nothing, why? Taxi Dave put down his beer glass.
Well, for a start, your head is usually up your ass, but lately I'm guessing you could see your tonsils, your head's been so far up there. Only now you seem to have a permanent grin.
The bar was empty apart from Taxi Dave, and, with the sale of the bar going through in 2 days, he decided to confide in him. Taxi Dave listened intently, and when he finished, he let out a big sigh.
Good thing she said not to go to Russia, or we'd have had to put a label over the charity box on the bar and write Ross's kidnap fund on it. You're a freaking idiot. You're being scammed. As soon as they ask for money, you need to move on to the next one.
Ross huffed and wished he'd kept his mouth shut. Last thing he'd wanted was negative thoughts on his relationship with Ivana. What do you mean when you say scammed?
Have you FaceTimed with her? If not, it's probably some guy you're exchanging emails with. Check her email header. First thing you'll find is she's hiding her IP address. Then at the bottom of the header, you'll find she's using AI professional mailer software that can handle thousands of emails for replies. I say she, but like I said, it's probably a guy you're talking to. Look, it's closing time. Show me your emails, and I'll point you in the right direction.
Ross didn't want to believe him. He was sure he'd gotten Ivana wrong. With the bar locked, Taxi Dave followed him up the stairway to his office. Ross settled down at his computer. Ross thought about what he'd said about FaceTiming with Ivana while he waited for the computer to fire up. He hoped she hadn't lied to him when she'd told him her webcam didn't work. He discounted the notion as the computer came to life.
Show me her pictures first. Let's see what we can glean from them.
Ross downloaded all but the sexy ones. Last thing he wanted was for him to see her almost naked.
Bingo. See there in the reflection of the store window.
What of it? Looks normal to me. Dave reached over and pressed the zoom.
See there. Some guy's taking the photo, probably the husband or her handler.
Ross thought back to the sexy photographs of her virtually naked. Damn, I never thought who might be taking the photos. Taxi Dave brought up the email header, and sure enough, the IP was hidden, and she was likely using professional mailing software as he'd said. He didn't want to believe what Taxi Dave was saying. And Ross turned to him. None of this proves anything. Taxi Dave scoffed, then had him move over and then typed Russian bride scam sites into the search engine browser. He copied one of her emails and pasted it into the Google search on the site. The result was instantaneous. 50 exact matches of the text using various aliases as follows, it read. He clicked on a link that pulled up a dozen or so middle-aged Americans, all telling their stories and the money they'd lost. Ross felt such an idiot to have been sucked into her snare. His hopes, dreams and wishes for the future lay in tatters. Part 9. The morning, when it came, was hot and sticky. He locked the bar and headed for the park. Sitting on a park bench, he watched the world go by. Totally humiliated, he determined he would never dare to wish again. A Shih Tzu started to snap at his heels, then jumped up at him, wagging its tail.
Get down, Suki. Sorry about that, she gets over-friendly at times.
When Ross looked over at her, he thought she was really attractive, a nice friendly smile on her lips. The dog stopped snapping and posed in a begging stance, her tail wagging furiously. No damage, I guess she just wanted my attention, he said and reached out to pet the dog.
Do you like dogs?
She asked, then sat next to him, and started a conversation. Her smile was infectious, almost hypnotized by how attractive she was. Ross looked at his watch, they must have been chatting for over an hour, and the bar should have been open 20 minutes ago. Look, I have to be going.
Me too, I'm afraid, but Suki'll need feeding. Listen, I hope you don't think of me as being too forward, but before you go, how about we meet up for a night on the town? I've really enjoyed your company.
He was completely caught off guard at her offer, but didn't hesitate to reply, considering it was more than he could have wished for. Yeah. Why not? That would be great. She took a pen and some paper from her purse, wrote down her telephone number and gave it to him.
Call me and don't leave it too long.
Don't worry, I'll call you tonight. Damn it, I ain't gonna make no wishes on this one, he thought. Ross turned and watched as she wiggled her way along the path away from him. I wish, he thought. His thoughts were unable to contain his excitement as he headed back to his bar for his leaving party with the sale going through. He couldn't help but wonder if his customers had planned anything in the way of a surprise for him leaving the bar, but he doubted it.
Part 10. Bob looked out from the bushes at the park to see Ross exit. Okay guys, looks as though we're on. A woman walked towards him and winked. Bob held out his hand and each of the Daves from the bar gave him $20 for Ross's going-away present. Here's the $100, he said to the woman. You'll get the rest when you've wined, dined and bedded him like we agreed.
Hell, no need for the money, Bob. He's cute as he's gullible, but I kinda like him. This one's on me. Come on, Suki. Let's go and wait for a phone call.
If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Declan Conner is the author of a catalog of full-length psychological, crime, and speculative thriller fiction books available on Amazon in all territories. You'll find the link in the description.